Hi there, welcome back to another tips and tricks video. My name is Brad, and today I'm going to be talking about how I tilt my paint on my canvas. This is kind of an unusual subject for paint pouring video, but it's pretty important. It's kind of crucial to the result of your painting. So I'm going to kind of walk you through my process, and it's like a three-phase process I have with my tilting. I kind of go through these 3 steps every time I do a painting. I don't really talk about them, or you probably don't realize I'm doing this 3-step process, but today I'm going to break it down for you and explain it so you can kind of maybe incorporate it into your paintings and your tilting, and it might help improve your final results. And before I get into the process, there's really 3 things we need for a successful paint pour. Probably more than 3, but these 3 are kind of major ones. First of all, we need the correct paint consistency, and you can find my paint formula in the description of this video, but the consistency is very important. We don't want our paints too thin, and we don't want them too thick, so we want them kind of just right to be able to easily tilt them. The second thing we need is the right amount of paint, and this is pretty crucial. If we have too little paint, we're really going to overstretch our canvas or overstretch our paint. We're going to kind of distort our design, and that's no good. If we have too much paint, we're really going to be dumping a lot of that paint off the canvas, and probably, you know, most of your awesome design as well, just because there's way too much paint. And we cannot have too much paint on our canvas once it's drying. That's probably the #1 cause of paint cracking and crazing, is just too much paint. So in order to get the right amount of paint, I refer to my handy dandy canvas coverage cheat sheet. Here's a little look at it. And I look at this every time I do a painting. I devise this through a lot of trial and error and kind of cross-checking other people's canvas coverage, you know, how much their formulas and calculators and things. But I came up with this cheat sheet. I have one for ounces and one for milliliters. And so there's like a US version and a metric version. If you want to get one of these, you can download it off of my website. I'll leave the link down in the comments, or in the description and the comments, why not? And you can go check it out and see if you want to get one. So I'm going to demonstrate my pouring or my tilting method on an 11 by 14. And for an 11 by 14, let's take a look. I have a flip cup. I'm going to do a flip cup. And so for 11 by 14, I need 6 ounces of paint. And right over here, you'll notice it says ring pour or straight pour. And I use 5 ounces of paint for one of those. So I have different amounts of paint I use for different techniques. Mostly for all the flip cup type techniques, it's this column, and I have a different amount for ring pours and straight pours. I like a little less paint with those techniques just because I like to expand those designs out and expand the rings out, but that's, you know, a topic for another video. So we need 6 ounces of paint for an 11 by 14, and that's including a base coat. And I always spread on a pretty thin base coat. I just find the paint moves around a lot easier. I don't like a real thick base coat, but just a spread out thin one works great for me. So let's talk about tilting our canvas. And you know, after we get the paint on there, we're left with a paint puddle, whether that's a flip cup, which we're going to be doing today, or a ring pour. We have a big puddle of paint. So let me take my Sharpie. So here's like this puddle of paint we have, right? It's kind of in the center. It's usually roundish. The first phase of my tilting, I like to expand that paint puddle. So what I want to do is I'll tilt it this way, kind of maybe up away from me, and then kind of in a circular motion. And I'm expanding that puddle around the canvas. So I'll kind of do the circular motion. You don't have to kind of do a circular motion like this. You could go forward and then back and then you could go back this way if you want, and then this way and this way. I tend to usually do the circular motion more often, but either way, any way you kind of want to do it. We want to expand our paint puddle from a small amount of paint in the center and have like a larger amount of paint covering more of the canvas. And at this first phase of tilting, I do not want the paint going over the edges. I want to keep the paint inside the canvas, so it's not rolling over the edges at this stage. So after I've expanded the paint puddle, then, especially like for flip cups, I'll look and see if I want to modify the paint in any way, which would be like a lip drag through the paint, or even fingers. I will do a finger drag through there sometimes, pouring a ribbon across the paint puddle. This is the time to alter the paint if you want to, because it's still fairly thick, and it's concentrated in this kind of in the center of the canvas, but once we do anything to it, it'll flow back together. After we've tilted off of all the edges and corners, it's too late at that point to really modify, because the paint is too thin. It's not going to flow back together, and you're probably going to get bare spots if you try it. Like, you'll see the canvas through the paint. So I'll demonstrate that when we get into the actual pouring part. So phase 1 is expanding our paint puddle. Phase 2 is we're going to start tilting off of the edges and the corners. So I'll pick a corner, and it depends on the painting and what the paint's doing, and that's how I'll kind of pick which corner I'll want to work off of. But then I'll go around the painting and I'll tilt the paint off, and then I'll immediately tilt backwards. So I'm tilting the paint off, and then I'm tilting to have the paint run back towards the center. We don't want to just have tons of paint flowing off those edges and corners. We want to try to conserve our paint, but we do need to cover the edges and the corners. So I'll pick each corner. I can work this corner, and then I could go down to this corner, or I could go clockwise, or I could go counterclockwise. It really depends on you and how the painting is acting and what you want to do. I tend to go more corner to corner in like a clockwise or counterclockwise direction most of the time. Sometimes I'll go one corner and then the opposite corner. It all depends on the painting. But this phase is really about getting our canvas covered. And we want to cover our canvas, cover our edges, and then proceed to the third step of the tilting. And the third stage is I'll set the painting down and I'll take a look at it. And I'm assessing the painting at this stage of the painting. And the next stage is we're just going to fine tune the tilting, see if there's anything we want to do. We might not want to do anything in the third stage. If the painting is looking great and we like it, leave it alone. If there's something weird you don't like, now is the time. We're going to try to fine tune, adjust the painting a little bit, get a nicer looking composition perhaps. And these are like small final touches. We're not going to be making any massive changes at this point. There's just not enough paint to really change a lot of stuff around. But this stage can take the longest time because sometimes you might really not like something down here, but most of the paint is over here. So it'll take some patience and some waiting to let the paint move and for you to alter and shift the composition in the way you'd like. So I know that's a lot of words, and I got all kinds of squiggly stuff over my canvas here, but once we start doing the flip cup, I'll walk you through it and tell you what my thinking process is, and I think it'll make a little more sense, hopefully. Okay, so let me set this aside for the moment. I'll just leave it right there. So our 11 by 14, I need a 6-ounce cup, and this is an 8-ounce cup, but I'm going to only put 6 ounces of paint in it. I've got some paints mixed up here. These are some leftover paints that I will give it try out. So let's layer our cup. So I'm just going to start with some gold. This is kind of a really nice parchment color. I'll put some of that in there. I'm not really trying to do any specific color palette or anything. These just are colors that look cool to me on my shelf. So we're going to give them a try. I got a black here. One thing about color is I generally like to have a light color, like a light value, a dark value, and a medium value. And one or two medium value colors. So that's kind of one of my main color theory concepts. A little more blue. And these are all just my floating layers. So now I'm going to do a high pour. I'm going to take some of the parchment color and I'm going to hold it up above the cup. And I like to do that, and the paint kind of shoots down in the cup. And there's a lot of mixing of paint that happens and a lot of blending of colors. I like to do that in my flip cups. So there's another high pour, and I'll end it with a little more black. All right, maybe a tiny bit of blue. There we go. That's 6 ounces of paint. Let me set that over here out of the way for the moment. So I've got a gray here. This is just like a leftover gray paint. I combined a bunch of paints from a leftover from all the drippings of one painting, and this is what I ended up with. So I'm going to use this as a base coat. And just pour that on. I'm going to spread that out. So that's good. That's my base coat. And I don't worry about the edges when I put my base coat down. I just the surface. And the edges will take care of themselves when we start tilting. All right, so that's our canvas all prepped. Now to flip our cup, and you can do it multiple ways. You can just flip it on there. You can take your canvas and turn it over on top of the cup. I'm just gonna flip it old-fashioned way and just let that sit there for a second. All right, let's see what we got. Well, that's looking interesting. Let me move the paint a little bit here to get it a little more centered. So here's our big paint puddle, and we've got a bunch of air bubbles. At this point, you could take your torch and pop them. I'll do that. I generally only use the torch to pop air bubbles. I don't really find that it promotes a lot of cells, personally. But I will use the torch to pop some air bubbles. So we popped a bunch. So now we're going to the first phase of our tilting, and that's just to expand our paint puddle. So I'm gonna slowly tilt forward without going over the edge, and then kind of in a circular motion, slowly. That's the other thing, is takes a little bit of patience, and I like to go slowly. So there we go. Now I've kind of expanded the puddle. I'm going to tilt back towards the center to kind of recenter the bulk of the paint. So at this stage, this is looking fairly boring to me, kind of like a yin-yang thing going on, but there's not a lot of interest. And so with the flip cups, it's kind of you never know exactly what's going to happen with the flip cup. So at this stage, I like to change things up. So I might take my cup and let's try a lip drag. So I'm going to just drag that through there. And see, the paint immediately kind of flows back together. That's why we want to do all this stuff at this early stage if we're going to modify the paint at all. I like that. Let's try another one. The other thing about modifying the paint at this stage is once we start tilting again, all this stuff is going to change and move and become a lot more interesting than it looks right now. Right now this looks kind of awful, but it's going to look a lot more, take on a lot more organic feel once we start tilting. So let me use my finger here. I'm just going to do a finger drag right through the paint. And I'm not going all the way to the bottom with that. I just try to float it through the paint. And I kind of like that. Let's see if we have any paint left. We've got a little bit. Let's just pour a ribbon on there. I kind of like that. I don't know if we got enough for another one. Maybe a very thin ribbon. Let's try another one. Again, you kind of have to go slowly with this. So we have one uninterrupted ribbon. There we go. I'm going to do one more kind of finger pull right through this way. Cool. Okay, so I kind of like that. We've added a lot of interesting things happening. Now it's time to tilt and see what we got. So we have to kind of pick a corner, and I think I'm going to start over here. And one thing I always like to do at phase 2 when I'm covering the corners and edges is tilt towards me. I don't like to tilt away from me because I can't see what's happening over there. And also, if I'm tilting towards me with my right hand, I'm able to kind of control the paint a little bit and cover the edges. So let's start moving the paint. And again, you do not have to rush with this. I tend to go fairly slowly. So the paint's coming, and you're going to lose some over the edges. That's totally fine. And here we go. I've covered that corner. Now I'm tilting back towards the center to get the paint back into the middle of the canvas. And so that looks good. We've covered one corner, and you can delicately, if you have a little bare spot, delicately touch that, and you can kind of pull the paint right down to cover any bare canvas spots. So I'm going to go to this corner next because I have a lot of paint over here. So I'm going to cover it. I've covered it. I'm going to tilt back. So we've got two corners covered. Now I'm going to turn the canvas. I can always, don't be afraid to just put your canvas back down and take a look at it. You do not have to do this all at once, like in midair. You have time, and you can set it down. I'm going to turn it again to get a better angle, and so I'm tilting towards me. Here we go. I'm going to do this corner next. And now the paint is going to start moving a little slower because we've got less paint on our canvas now after tilting over, two corners. But it's still moving fairly quickly. So there we go. We've tilted the third one, tilt away again. All right, now I'm going to turn it again. We've got one left, and let's see what happens with this one. Now at this stage, the last corner, the paint is going to move at its slowest. So just be patient, it'll get there. I want to get rid of that black, so got that tilted off. Now I'm going to tilt back. I wanted to have this corner mostly the light color and the gold. So I tilted that black off. You can kind of do some compositional things while you're tilting the phase 2 over the corners and edges. That's kind of another discussion, is composition stuff. This is just kind of the big broad strokes of tilting. But there we've had it. We've done it. We've got our canvas covered. I like it. And I tend to grab the bottom of my canvas, and I tend to hold on to my little cup hooks down there. It helps to hold and stabilize the canvas while you're tilting, and you're not getting your fingers on the edges. So, because I like those cool edges that we get when we tilt over the paint over the edge. So now I'm going to just set this down, and I might wipe my hands quickly, and I'm going to assess the painting and see if there's anything we want to do. I kind of like it the way it is right now. You see how our finger drags and our lip drags and the ribbons have really changed, right? And we've got a much more dynamic, interesting painting than that kind of really boring puddle that we started with. So I really like that. We don't have like a ton of cells or anything like that. We've got a little bit, but I really like the way this painting's looking. So I'm wipe my hands off quickly. So let's just tilt something just to change it. I kind of like the way this is going. I don't really dislike anything in particular. We've kind of got these similar shapes on these corners here. The little, the little half round shapes. I don't love this one. Let's try to tilt this one off and see what happens there. So again, I'm just going to lift up the canvas and tilt towards me, and the paint's going to start to move slower now, but it's still moving. So, and then our corner is shifting. We're kind of tilting that off. There we go. I'm going to tilt it back again. So I like that better. I think that's a more interesting shape. Let's try tilting this way. Now, one thing you can do, if you really want to change the direction or really shift things around, you can just tilt your canvas straight up and down, that way or this way, and that'll really start to kind of move things in like large amounts. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve, and if you're trying to really tilt something off. With this painting, there's nothing I really dislike right now. I don't love this little white area. It kind of takes your eye off the canvas. Let's try to get rid of that, just to see what happens. So again, it's moving, and I'm kind of subtle shifts of direction with the canvas. So we got rid of that. I'm going to go a little more. Okay, now I'm going to tilt back again. And I actually like that a whole lot better. I like this gold line going kind of off, not in the corner. It's going off the side. I like that a lot. Okay, is there anything else? I'm going to just hold it straight up and shift some of this centralized stuff down a little bit. So and these are all these things we're doing right now are very subtle, and they're personal. Like, you might think, my God, what are you doing? But, I might see something that you're not seeing. Everyone's a little different, and everyone perceives these paintings differently. So I get a kick out of in class, when I'm teaching classes, I'll be tilting and one of my students said, "What are you doing? It looks amazing." And I was like, "Well, I don't like this." "Oh, okay." But it's not that I'm right and they're wrong, or they're, vice versa. It's just everyone sees things and experiences these paintings differently, which I think is one of the really cool things about this style of art. So I think at this stage, I don't think there's anything else I really want to do. I really like this painting the way it is. So if that's the case, if you're feeling, one thing I don't like is this right here. So let's try to tilt this off. This little swoop right down there. Not that it really bothers me, but let's just try to tilt it off. We're tilting stuff, so let's tilt. So I'm gonna just hold it almost straight up, and the paint's just gonna slowly pull that right off. Can you see that? Wow. So I'm going to just set that down. I'm not going to tilt backwards with that one because it's kind of right on this edge. And let me turn here, maybe you can see it. And it's just, the paint's going to just kind of pull that right down off the canvas. So in maybe a couple seconds, it'll be totally gone. And I lied. I'm going to turn this. And now I'm going to tilt it back the other way. Just because I don't want that other ribbon. I'll show you in a second here. See, I didn't want this gold ribbon here to get sucked over that edge. So I think that looks much better. So let me turn it. And so I'd say this is a completed painting. I really like it. I really like what the high pouring did. It kind of blended all those colors together, and we got some really awesome looking kind of blue greens in there. So I think it's a pretty cool flip cup. The final thing I would do, now that we're complete, the painting's done, take my palette knife and then scrape the bottom. Try to get the bulk of that paint off of the bottom of the canvas. Just like that, and then I'll lift the canvas up, turn it, and then do the other two sides. All right. So that is it. That's basically my system for tilting, the 3-stage tilting method. And again, the first step is to have the right amount of paint, have the paint at the right consistency. Once you flip our cup, we want to expand that paint puddle, then do any modifications we want. If we want to alter the paint in any way, do it at that stage. Then we're going to tilt over each edge and corner consecutively, or whatever order you want to take that. Then we're going to set the painting down, assess it, see if there's anything we want to change. Then we're going to do a little more fine tuning and tilt off any areas we really don't like, keeping in mind that we can't do any huge changes at that stage. If the painting is pretty much set, we're just modifying small little things. And then after that, we're done. Once you say, "I really like it," that's usually the sign to say, "Okay, I'm done with it." Then we're going to kind of scrape the paint off the bottom, and that's it. Now we can just set it somewhere to dry, and we'll have a finished acrylic pour painting. And in this case, I really like it. So thanks so much for watching this video and learning my method of tilting. Again, if you are interested in that canvas coverage cheat sheet, I'll put that in the description, and I'll throw it in a comment too down there. You can go check that out and pick that up if you want. And if you want my paint pouring formula, I'll put that down in the description as well. So thanks for stopping by and watching me tilt a painting. This was a lot of fun, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.